Hi everyone, welcome to my July wrap-up. It's going to be a little bamboozled, but we will try to do it the best we can. It is super hot outside, so I am trying my best to keep cool. The first book I finished this month I actually don't have. I can't hold it up and be like, here it is, and I'm not going to edit it in, but I finished Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb right at the beginning of the month, which is the last in the trilogy of the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. I enjoyed the third book. I would say the second book reigned as my favorite book. The third book really just tied things up and sent us into a bunch of different directions, which I think will be continued onward in the Atonement trilogy. I think I will do the Live Ship Traders next with my husband, depending on how he's feeling. I don't really want to go into it too much because it is the third book in a series, but it's about Fitz and subsequently the Fool, who gets his own series. So if you want to try that particular one, you should. I don't want to get in it too much. I just said that because I always feel like if I'm going to talk about a trilogy, I'm giving away the plot of books 1 and 2. So see how I felt about Assassin's Apprentice and subsequently Royal Assassin, and then make your own judgment there. I'm pretty sure everybody's reviewed it anyway. The next book I finished was Atonement by Ian McEwan, with this gorgeous, horrible movie cover. It should be said, I don't like movie covers. Usually I will try not to get them if it's a book I like, unless it's like someone I really appreciate in the movie. Like A Streetcar Named Desire, I have the Marlon Brando cover on that. But this is about books. So, this book is roughly divided into 3 parts. The first part was really good. Really, really good. I liked the character of Brioni. I'm probably saying that wrong. I thought she was interesting. I thought the whole thing that happened was interesting. But the subsequent 2 parts just went, what? So we follow Brioni, who makes this wrong decision very early on in the book about a situation she's seen. And she goes on to tell people, and this takes place in 1935 during the war. We've got a guy dressed like he's in war. So she tells on her sister and this guy who are in the situation, and she interprets it one way, but it is completely the opposite way. This leads everyone to have a whole schmozzle, and this guy's life goes to hell afterwards. He ends up getting imprisoned. The woman, of course, hangs out and waits for him. That's her sister. She ends up becoming a nurse, and that's really awesome and everything. But, okay, so I'm guessing atonement means she's atoning for her crimes later on. The second part follows him a little bit more, and I was like, why are we following him? Why? I don't get it. I don't care about the war. Like, for some reason, the middle of this book is just about war and being in war, and I don't get why that plays into it. Now, a lot of people speak that Ian McEwan is amazing. Some people don't think Ian McEwan's amazing. He was very widely taught at my university, and I knew a lot of people who read a lot of Ian McEwan. But a lot of people have also said that this is not one of his best books. This is probably not the book to start me on then, because now I have absolutely no desire to read Ian McEwan. The second part sucked. The third part was superfluous, and there's no closure. So if you haven't read Atonement and you don't care, or if you love Ian McEwan, maybe you'll read it and think it's okay. But if you're like me, you'll just be completely let down by the second part. I guess it's just no. This is going away from me. I tell you, that's what it's doing. After that, I have a little list here. I keep jot lists of everything I've read, and I keep running totals. Just FYI, so far this year, I have read mostly female authors. 29 of the books I've read are female, and then 15 are male, and 1 is trans. So there you have it. Apparently, I'm big into women. The second book I finished was Clearing the Plains. I won't say too much about it. It's by James Dashuk, who is a professor at the University of Regina or Saskatchewan. He lives in Regina. Full disclosure, he knows my family. My family my brother teaches at the University of Regina. University of Regina, Kinesiology and Health Studies. So I have met him and everything, but that has absolutely no bearing on the fact that this is an amazing book. And if you are Canadian, you should read it. And if you aren't Canadian and you care about the Indigenous population, you should read it. But basically, everyone should read it. There is a full review on it on my channel. Please feel free to go look it up. I'd say I put the link down below, but I'm really bad about linking things. Also, if you want to follow me outside of YouTube, I am Sadie Ruin on Twitter and Sadie Ruin on Instagram. Then I went on, I'm trying to do these in order, that's why I'm looking. I read Light Housekeeping by Jeanette Winterson, and I've heard much praise for Jeanette Winterson, primarily on the British booktubers and the Australians, because Sophie Carlon, she speaks very highly of Jeanette Winterson subsequently. Wait until you see the haul. Pick this up at Goodwill. It's like $2, and I absolutely loved it. I finished it in, I think it was a day and a half, 2 nights worth of reading. It's not very long. Yeah, it's like 230 pages. And this is a story about Silver, who is a child who is left behind, basically. She lives in a strange house on a strange place, and if this is what magical realism is, now I understand what magical realism is a bit more. I'm not sure it's my genre, but I really enjoyed the book itself. So Silver, her mother passes away, so her and her dog, who have lived in the lopsided house, have to go move in with someone, so the teacher moves her in with the lighthouse keeper so she can learn how to be a lighthouse keeper. Except suddenly they're going to automate the lighthouse, and this throws everything off track. And while she's living at the lighthouse, the blind lighthouse keeper keeps telling her all these stories about Babel Dark, who was the major man who created this, and subsequently, I believe it's, what is his name? John Lewis Stevenson, I believe. The one who wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is also tied into this. And so Pugh, the lighthouse keeper, Mr. Pugh, is telling her the history of Babel Dark, who created the lighthouse. And so everything kind of goes sideways, but it's very circular. And Silver eventually believes she's going to become a lighthouse keeper, but then they automate it and the Pugh disappears. And she's not sure she'll ever see him again, so she goes to a town and, you know, kind of has a little bit of a life and falls in love, and then she goes back to see if she can find him, and just as she gets there, he appears, but he doesn't have the dog, which made me sad. It was just a really good read, and it's got some blurbs from Entertainment Weekly, the New York Times Book Review, and Muriel Spark for Vanity Fair. I'm really glad I got a hardcover of it, because I could see myself rereading it a few times. It's just really well written and very beautiful. So, finished that. After that, I went to Of Love and Shadows by Isabel Allende. And I've read other Isabel Allende. I've read The House of Spirits, Eva Luna, Daughter of Fortune, Maya's Notebook. And I have to say, this is one of my least favorite Allende's I've read. The premise is about a man who becomes a photographer and a woman who becomes a journalist. The background of their families is involved. Apparently this is magical realism as well. It is not done as well as Light Housekeeping. There is a woman who's believed to be sainted and can cause miracles because she has seizures. Subsequently, she gets disappeared, and these two are two main characters. I don't even remember their names. How sad is that? Irene and Francisco. They go off to find the girl. Subsequently, they uncover crimes and find out the girl's passed away, and a whole schmozzle goes down. There's a lot going on in this book, and then we get the whole backstory of everybody's family and everything their family ever did and why this affects everything today. At the root of it, I found it very two-dimensional. I didn't think the characters had as much play as they could have, and I thought the fact that all the family is described so in-depthly ends up leaving us with no real feelings towards our main characters, aside from the fact that, hey, shouldn't they hook up by now? And the fact that I thought, hey, shouldn't they hook up by now, at some point in the book, made me really sad. It's not a very long book. It's 290 pages. But I would not recommend this to people. If you want to read Isabel Allende, find something else, like The House of Spirits or Eva Luna, or even Daughter of Fortune. Maya's Notebook I also really enjoyed. This one just did nothing for me. Murder mystery or thriller or love story, I think she was trying to attempt too much in one tiny little book. So after I finished that, we had Booktube-a-thon, and since I didn't do too well at Booktube-a-thon, I am going to mash my Booktube-a-thon in here. So I actually finished on this book, which is The Witness Wore Red, the 19th Wife Who Brought the Polygamous Cult Leaders to Justice, by Rebecca Musser with M. Bridget Cook. I have a full review of that, so I'm not going to say much about it, except I really enjoyed it, and I was really glad I finished on a high note. I started with this one, which is Title Zone by Sarah Moss, which made its rounds on Booktube and has been all over Booktube. And I think my only major complaint is that while I was reading it, you could see my fingerprints all over the front cover because it's that rubbery stuff, and I did not like that. That was my major complaint for this book. Purely cosmetic. After reading it, I want to read everything else she's ever done because I loved it. It's a story of this man whose daughter suddenly collapses, her heart stops beating, and she ends up in the hospital, and they don't know what's going on. And the plot doesn't really go anywhere. There is no real, the 3 weeks we cover here, and the backstories we get, and the little snippets, there's no plot. What is the plot? If you like plot, this is not a book for you. If you like characters and interactions and really well written things that are beautiful, then you'll like it, because it is very beautifully written, and I felt like I really knew the characters, particularly Adam. I thought it was great, and the inversion of the stereotype of the stay-at-home mom to being the stay-at-home dad, also very nice. I thought it really addressed the problem of academia right now, which is that everybody who goes off and gets really advanced degrees can't actually get a job because they only want to hire sessionals. So he's a sessional, his wife's a doctor. It's only because his wife's a doctor that he can actually make a living being a sessional. Sessionals don't get paid that well. So there's that in there, and it also tackles the fact that they live in this tiny house that they bought, and it's worth way more than when they bought it, but they couldn't afford anything else if they kind of moved out of there. So it also tackles the real estate problems. I feel like there's a lot of subtle underscoring going on in this that really speaks to our current time, in that, even the doctors can't figure out what's wrong with her. They think it's asthma, but it's not asthma. They think it's asphyxiation, or allergy-induced asphyxiation. They try to figure it out, but they don't. In the end, we still don't know what the heck happened to the kid, but she's going to grow up and she's going to try to do things, and they have to relearn how to be a family with this incorporated into their lives. And I just thought it was really beautifully written how it was written, and it tackles some of the current issues of our day, and how right now families are starting to subvert those expectations, and that the woman can be the breadwinner, but it's really hard, and it was hard on him as the husband, as the stay-at-home husband and this professor, to really take on that role and have other people judge him for doing so. And then lastly, I put 2 manga volumes in my Booktube-a-thon TBR. I got through one because this was my 1-in-1 day. I didn't do the reading outside because it's been way too hot, and I'm a Canadian. Once it hit, I'm a Canadian from the prairies. Let's get this straight. Once it gets over 30 degrees, I stop. And there's no AC in Washington. The entire state of Washington gave up on AC. So once we hit the 30s, I just lay in front of the fan. I'm not going outside. Now it gets down to -50. I'm fine. I got that. I got it on hold. So I read Cheese Sweet Home Part 3. I think there's a Part 4, and that's it. And it's just cute adorableness of a cat and the cat's adventures and finding and making friends. The only disturbing part is that this cat goes out and about, but I'm telling myself that in Japan cats can go out and about and no one hurts them. So, yeah. Chi makes a friend. Pure mind candy. And my cat Frank looks exactly like that. So if you're looking for manga, or if you have a teenager that is looking, or even you know what, if they can read, you can give them this, because there is nothing controversial, there is nothing disturbing, and it is a wonderfully funny, well-drawn romp. It is by Konami Katana, and it is all done in color. This is one of the few mangas where everything's done in color, but it's so easy and cute. Like, look they're just meowing at each other for pages. So that is my July, and I have started August. August may look funny because I've got some tomes I'm digging into. I've had War and Peace started since the War and Peace one started, but I'm only 200 pages in, and the Brothers Karamazov started, so I'm going to try and read that too, because 2 Russian authors, that sounds like a smart move. And then I've got the Bronte I'm reading with my husband, not to mention the stack of things I wanted to read during Booktube-a-thon that I didn't get to. So, but if you want to talk about it, feel free to leave comments, like, subscribe, share, whatever, and of course, you can talk to me on Twitter and Instagram. Bye for now.